Welcome back. We have another episode of Channel 914. I'm your host, as always, Rel Allen, and we're going to get straight into it this week. Yo, there's been a story recently, man, that's been in media or social media all over, man, that really, I don't know, man, it just really made me feel good. I love when people bounce back. I love when people beat the odds. I love when people are kind of discarded off and they just do the work, buckle down, and prove everybody wrong. So recently, man, Sha'Carri Richardson came back, and I don't want to say shocked the world because everybody knew what she was capable of, but she just came back and just dominant fashion and won the world championships, man, in Budapest. She now holds the title of the fastest woman in the world. And it seemed like not that long ago, well, because it was, that people thought that, she was basically a fuck up, that she couldn't get right. She couldn't get her act together. She was too this, she was too that, too cocky, too flashy. And then she just kind of went away for a while, came back, focused, determined, shut that shit down, man. Just to give a little background in case of people that don't know or may have forgotten, her story is well documented, man. She first rose to fame pretty much back in 2019. She was running track at LSU, Louisiana State University, and she won the national championships, man. She broke the record for the 100 meters at the time, running 10.75, which made her one of the 10 fastest women in history. And she did that at just 19 years old. Very young, man, a teenager, right? In April of 2021, she ran a new personal best of 10.72, becoming the sixth fastest woman of all time at that time. That's since changed. But at that time, she was the sixth fastest woman of all time and the fourth fastest woman in American history, right? That at the age of 21. She qualified for the 2020 Summer Olympics, winning the 100-meter dash in 10.86. But and that was in 2021 because everybody remembers the pandemic, and that the Olympics got moved. So the 2020 Olympics didn't take place in 2020, right? But right after she qualified, came out that she had a positive test for marijuana, and she was deemed ineligible to run the 100 meters. She was disqualified because she tested positive for that race. So that positive test automatically disqualified her from competing in the 100 meters, which was her signature race. She completed a treatment program right after that. So that made her eligible as an alternate. The USA track team, if they wanted to, could have placed her on the relay team. But obviously they did not. She was seen as kind of toxic at the time. And she was brash and bold. She talked a lot of shit. She kind of rose to fame. Like pretty much nobody knew who she was. And then she was just everywhere. She was all over the place. She became a little bit of a media darling. She had the hair, she had the long nails. People were comparing her to FloJo. For a little bit, she could do no wrong. And maybe it kind of went to her head a little bit, maybe possibly, but life will humble you real quick. And she learned that. The next year after the whole deal with the failed drug test and her not being able to qualify for the Olympics, in June of 2022, she failed to qualify for the 100 meters at the United States Track and Field Championships. And that was a huge setback for her, man. She finished fifth in the first round of the championships, man, which was like really an embarrassment for her. For an athlete of her caliber to not only not make it out of the first round, but she finished fifth. At that point in time, she had been in the news for a lot. She talked a lot of stuff, and then they had the thing about the drug test, and people weren't very sympathetic about what happened to her during that time. She alluded to the fact that the positive drug test was a result of her losing her mother and her using cannabis in an attempt to cope with that loss. It's my understanding that her and her mother had a very complicated relationship. I don't think she really knew her mom. And she said that she learned about the death of her mother from a complete stranger. Like somebody just came that told her, yeah, you know your mom died. And that really affected her. And she used it to kind of cope and calm her nerves because, I mean, she still had races to run. She still had things to do. She was trying to qualify for the Olympics, which for a track and field athlete it don't get no bigger than that, right? So I kind of was a little sympathetic, had some empathy for us to say, but people weren't trying to hear that shit. People were saying it was just an excuse. And I'll also add that she wasn't necessarily using that as an excuse. She owned up to it. She said she did it. She didn't try to lie and say, well, no, this is BS and I didn't do all this. No, she pretty much owned up to it. She didn't fight the suspension. She went through the treatment. She did everything she had to do. But people were just dogging her. And then once she failed to qualify the next year, people were just really ready to cast her off, man. And I know there were a few other incidents, man. She had something with there was an event where she was on the airline and something happened with that, and there was a whole incident, and people were just really, really hard on Sha'Carri, man. She had I don't know, man. It didn't look good for her for a long time. But then after she failed to qualify, she pretty much, man, almost like fell off the face of the earth. Right? She just, man, like you didn't see her, you didn't hear from her. People kind of forgot about Sha'Carri. I almost did. And then she just reappeared, man. You know, she started running, you started seeing her. She was winning races, man. She's dusting people, you know what I'm saying? And she was still cocky, but you could tell she had toned it down a little bit, right? You know, she still had that confidence. And I feel like athletes, especially athletes of that caliber, people that compete at the highest level, you really got to have almost an irrational level of confidence, you know, to be able to compete, to be able to keep up with that, to be able to train. You have to have this insane belief in yourself. So I never really saw what she was doing as being like too much. I thought that was just kind of like what she needed to be to get herself up. But you could tell that she had toned it down a little bit. She had learned from her experiences. And, man, she came back and she just started killing it, man. And it wasn't this last race. It wasn't the championship. It was in one of the qualifying races that she ran. She did an interview after that race. And she said something, man, that really, really stuck with me. She said, I'm not worried about the world anymore. I've seen the world be my friend, and I've seen the world turn on me. Now, a lot of people don't learn that lesson. And she had to learn it the hard way, right? She went from this rising star, all this fame, and in this world now, especially with social media, man, you get up there pretty quick. Your rise to fame can be like that, right? But once everything started going wrong, it was just like she became the target of so much hate and so much animosity and so much maliciousness, man, was coming her way. And it's got to be hard to deal with that, especially when it's just like a second ago, though, these same people over these same outlets, the same internet that loved you now hates you. Especially for somebody that young that really is kind of naive to the ways of the world, still kind of has an idealistic mindset, regardless of whatever hardship she may have gone through, man. When you're that young, you really kind of still are naive to the way the world can be and just how cruel the world can be to you. To see her go through that, deal with it, take a step back, do what she needs to do, and then come back, man, and then win the way she did, man, Sha'Carri, one of my favorite people. And I always fucked with her. I wasn't as harsh as other people were. I did recognize, because it became pretty plain to see that she was dealing with some things, especially after her mother dying. And you could just see it on her, man. It was like all that stuff was weighing on her. And she didn't look like herself. But when she came back this time, man, like her whole demeanor, her whole aura was different. And you could just see it. She was just in a better place mentally up here. The physical gifts, the tools that she had were undeniable, right? But a lot of that doesn't really count for anything if you don't have it up here. And she seems to have gotten this right up here, man. And I couldn't be happier for her. It's crazy to see, but we all should know this now. The world, and the internet, for that fact, it's very fickle. Very, very fickle. It's very easy for you to be built up and put on a platform and just as quick be torn down, man. There are just so many stories and examples of people that were put on this pedestal and just to be knocked off just as fast as they got on there. In this age of going viral and, internet fame, it's like people will do just about anything if they think it's going to make them go viral, if they think it's going to make them famous, for them to get their quote unquote 15 minutes of fame. It's almost scary what people will do. But what's scarier is how eager the masses will be to tear you down. If you can check the comment section of pretty much any viral post or any post from a relatively popular account, and you'll see some of the most vile and cruel shit that you could ever imagine. I mean, people will say all types of just wild, off the wall, insane things in the comment section. And it's really sad because you know that this is stuff that they would never say in person. They'll never say it to anybody one-on-one, like in their face, in their presence. But the internet gives people a lot of courage to just say the most cruel things that they can think of in their mind and not think twice about it, really. You have a lot of people that are trolls that's just what they do. They get off, and they just can't wait to see people torn down. And it's really kind of a crazy place to be in, man, and how people can be so quick to jump on a bandwagon of trying to destroy somebody, and a lot of times have the facts wrong, not even really know the whole story, not have the correct context. But people will just go with it, man. And you don't even really have to be famous for that. Like, you can go viral and just be like a regular ass person, and you can just make a post to say something, and somehow they catch on, and all of a sudden you got people fucking threatening to kill you. And that's not even exaggeration, man. I recently read a story about this writer from The Atlantic. It's a publication that I've read a lot over the years. But this writer was just a subject of a pretty viral backlash, right? So last year he published an interview with somebody that had defected from InfoWars. And he had a lot of shit to say about Alex Jones. Now, if you don't know who Alex Jones is, he was the owner of InfoWars. It was like this big, huge YouTube channel, man. He was pulling in all types of money, but it was basically a conspiracy theorist pipe dream, right? There was so many things he would say on there. And what ultimately brought him down was he was one of those people that was saying that the Sandy Hook school shooting was a hoax, all the crisis actors and all that other stuff. And the parents sued him, and they won. And they basically sued him into not existing anymore, well, at least the channel. So this writer interviewed somebody that had defected from that platform before all of that actually came to pass. And normally, for his stories and these editorials, well, there's his interview in an editorial section of The Atlantic, right? So normally, he would just use stock photos as the cover art for his stories. This time, say he didn't really feel like looking for something, and he didn't want to use just some old regular photo of Alex Jones, so he decided to use an AI art tool to develop the cover photo. So, of course, when you publish something, when any images you use, you have to give credit for where it came from. So, in the story, once it was published, he credited the image to the AI program that he used. So the next day after he published that, there was an art director that saw it. And after this art director realized that the image in that story was using AI, he was a little pissed. So what a lot of people do, they go to the internet and they vent their frustrations, right? So he went on Twitter and he sent out a tweet basically condemning the author and The Atlantic for using AI to generate art for their stories, basically saying that this is taking away from an artist and how they eat, how they live, right? So normally there would be an artist, a photographer, somebody like that would get paid for making these. But now they're using AI, which, it's a valid concern. They want to keep their jobs. They don't want computer programs to come along and take their stuff. So a publication as big as The Atlantic using that could be a big deal. So when the author saw it, and basically he understood. He was like, "Oh, these are valid concerns." He didn't think about it like that. He really was just being lazy, honestly. And he reached out to the artist to clarify. Basically, this wasn't something that The Atlantic was doing. He didn't even send it through the art department, anything like that. It was just a straight editorial. It was something he was publishing himself. It wasn't really necessarily through The Atlantic. So he reached out, he clarified what his intentions were and how everything came to be with the author. And they basically squashed the beef amongst themselves. With the artist. And him and the artist squashed the beef themselves. And the artist even took his tweet down. He was like, "Okay, you know what? I get it. Misunderstanding. I jumped the gun a little bit. I take it back. We good." Unfortunately, it was too fucking late because people had already seen his tweet, and he said, he put his phone down, and a couple hours later, he getting messages in his inbox talking about how he's a piece of shit. He doesn't understand what's happening, man. But after that, it just caught on. It took on a life of its own, and people are just harassing this dude. One person even went as far as to say that he deserved to die in a mass shooting. Just that's a very specific thing. Like, the way the person is gonna die in a mass fucking shooting, like, who even thinks of something like that to say? But that's how far it went. And this is just a regular ass guy that's a writer that published a story, and he used an AI generated art piece because he was lazy. That really was his only fault, that he was just lazy. He didn't feel like it. He understood. He even went as far to say, before it caught fire, that he would never do that again, because he understood that him being a writer is a bit of an artist himself. He understands the fight that they are having against AI generated art. I mean, shit, ChatGPT could fuck around and take his job, so he understood. But none of that mattered to the masses of people that were berating him and talking shit about him. And they were taking things completely out of context, saying things that absolutely weren't true. It got to the point where people were saying that The Atlantic had let go of their art department and they were going to be using AI generated art going forward for all of their pieces, which was absolutely false. Nothing about that was true, but people ran with it. And so many people that never met this man, that didn't know him, that didn't know his intentions, had written him off, calling him all types of names, and even wishing death on him, all because he used an AI-generated piece of art. Now, all that's blown over. He's fine. He actually wrote an article about that in his experience, and just kind of like, talking about the dangers of how far shit can go and how quickly things can go left if you go viral. A lot of times people don't think about that when they're trying to go viral. You could go viral for the wrong fucking reasons. But it seems, well, not seems, people have taken away the humanity from others. They don't see people as humans when they're looking at it through the lens of the internet. Because I just don't think in a personal setting, one man or one woman will come up to somebody else and say, hey, you deserve to fucking die in a mass shooting. Things like that just don't happen in person. Well, I'm not saying they don't happen, but not as common as it is on the internet. But it's like when you look at people on the internet, when you see people post a picture, it's almost like you forget that they're human beings, right? And you feel like you can just say whatever the fuck you want to them. And because you're doing it through a phone or a computer or whatever, there really are no consequences to it most of the time. You can just get away with it. You can just say all types of wild things and people don't care. The issue comes in when people are so enamored with the admiration of the world. And when you seek that admiration, you can fall victim to that. And people oftentimes are crushed by this, right? I mean, you see it with professional athletes. You see people like Kevin Durant that just can't seem to get away from having conversations with people on Twitter that are talking shit about him that are never, ever get to the level where he is, And it's almost like, the work you've done. You know what it took to get here. You know how talented you are. You know who you are. But yet somehow you allow perfect fucking strangers who would never in a million years dream of saying this to you in person get under your skin because you care about the admiration of the world. Kevin Durant's been doing this shit for years, man, creating burner accounts, all types of wild stuff. One of my favorite rappers, man, used to be this dude. I'm gonna say this dude like y'all know. Talib Kweli. Most people know who he is, man. Love Talib, man. Love Black Star. His podcast, even The People's Party, man, was one of my favorites. I listened to a lot. He had a lot of dope interviews. But this dude loves to argue with random people on the internet. And I just don't understand why. Like, anybody that makes comments, he'll make whole posts about random people, people that really shouldn't matter to him at all, right? But he's just so obsessed with it. He's so obsessed with what people think and what people are saying that he's willing to go to bat and to fight with, to the point where now he used to post a lot about his art and what he was doing and his show. Now it seems like all his posts are addressing some sort of beef with some random fucking person on the internet, with some sort of troll, somebody that's just fucking with him. People saying things to him really just to get a reaction out of it. He just can't stop. And it just really is sad to see how borderline obsessed people can become when they're on that pedestal, but then people are trying to knock you down. And a lot of times, shit, you help them do it by just giving them that energy. And it was just good to see Sha'Carri recognize that, see her faults in it, step away, come back, and now I don't care about the world. I've seen what the world can do. And I just feel like that's the right attitude to have. You can't do things for the world, man. You got to do this shit for you and be secure in who you are and what you're doing and where you're going, independent of what people are going to be about you or think about you and say about you. Because you can't please everybody. That's facts. People know that, right? But you also are just, you never know, especially in this day and age, what you can say or do that's going to set some people off, and something that you can see as completely innocent and not a big deal will completely fucking blow up. And even when people do things and say things that are not true about you, can be taken as gospel and people are run with it, and it can actually ruin your life, man. It was, how many years ago was that? I think it was back in like 2010, 2011, somewhere around that rapper Chingy. Even though his career was probably done by that point, to be quite honest with you. But, you know, any chances of him coming back were pretty much laid to rest because Sydney Starr, who's a transgender woman and a kind of an internet sensation, she's a big social media personality, but she lied, completely made up a story. She's since admitted this, about having a relationship with him. And that shit ruined him. You know, and he, of course, he denied it, but nobody believed it. And he reportedly lost a record deal because of that. And nobody really talks about the fact that she came out and said she lied. Everybody just remembers what happened, you know. And the fact is, a lot of people, even if she came out and said she lied, a lot of people are still going to believe it because that's what they want to believe. So when you're dependent on the opinions of others, then, I mean, that's pretty much a recipe for disaster. But it's easy to be that way. You know, especially when we put ourselves out there, similar to what I do now. I mean, I want people to like this shit. I want people to watch. I want people to say positive things to me. But I mean, you know, if people don't watch, if people don't say positive things, if people say mean shit, I mean, I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of, and I know why I do this. And I don't do this for the world. I do this for me. I do this for the people that do fuck with it. I do this to honor my brother. So the world doesn't dictate how and what I do with this. There was a time where I was kind of questioning, do I still want to do it? How am I going to continue to do it? My life kind of got changed around a little bit, started a new job, and my routine kind of got thrown off. I was a lot busier. I just didn't have a lot of time. And I was just like, yo, am I going to continue this? After I hit my year mark of doing this, I had like a planned break in there anyway, kind of like a season break. So, but during that time, it was just like, man, how am I going to continue to do this? Do I want to do this? And I kind of just stepped away from it for a minute, and I wasn't even thinking about doing it for a little while. And finally, after a month, I just decided, you know what? I had an idea for an episode that had some stuff I wanted to talk about, and I just got back to it. And as I was preparing, as I was setting up my lights and my camera, getting all my materials in order, I was just really reminded of why I do it. Because I like it. I love it. And the fact that I don't always get a lot of views, I'm not going to say that it isn't discouraging, because sometimes it is. But that's not why I do it. So if I ever do actually decide to stop doing this, It won't be because of what the world thinks of it. It'll be because I don't want to anymore, for no other reason. And I think for people like Sha'Carri that understand that we ultimately have to be responsible for ourselves, and like I forgot what comedian said that, but it's called self-esteem for a reason. It's how you think about yourself. And nobody else should be able to change how you think about yourself. Not even all the people in the world, even if they're all against you. I mean, if people are all saying you're a piece of shit, if you're a terrible person, this, that, and the third about you, if you truly know that you're not any of those things, then you shouldn't feed into it. Don't allow the world to tell you who you are. You got to decide that for yourself. Shout out to Sha'Carri, man. It was just, like I said, when I seen her doing it, and when I heard her say what she said, I knew I just had to say something about it. I knew I had to talk about it. Such a good story to see. I'm so glad she's back. I hope she continues on this path. And I see nothing but great things for her in the future, just like I see for myself. But that's going to do it for this episode of Channel 914. Hope y'all keep rocking with me. For all the people that continue to watch, keep supporting, keep liking, commenting, sharing, man. Love y'all to death. Y'all could be watching so many other things, but y'all sitting here rocking with me. For that, I'm always going to be grateful. And I always will express my gratitude for it. Till next time, peace out.